Good evening, everyone, distinguished guests, esteemed researchers and colleagues. On behalf of Beit Lisaniyat International Academy, it gives me a great pleasure to welcome you to our scientific event or scientific lecture this evening. I would like to start by expressing our heartfelt gratitude to our speaker who has joined us today to share his valuable insights and research findings. I also extend my sincere appreciation to our supervisors and support team for their support and collaboration in facilitating these events. Additionally, I wish to acknowledge our coordination and technical assistance team for their contributions. This evening, we have Dr. Abdelwahid Bouzar and Mr. Ahmed Martou in reporting this lecture. Together we want to address a topic that lies at the very heart of academic inquiry. The lecture is titled From Questionnaire Construction to Advanced Data Analysis, Common Mistakes and Better Alternatives. All models are wrong, but some are useful. This sentiment captures the essence of our discussion tonight. For many researchers, particularly doctoral students in the social sciences and humanities, methodological literacy remains a persistent challenge. Small errors in questionnaire design can compromise data quality before analysis even begins. Misunderstood statistical procedures can lead to questionable conclusions, and artificial separation between quantitative and qualitative findings continue to weaken much of what is called mixed method of research. Tonight, our speaker will guide us through these pitfalls and offer better alternatives. He will take us on a journey from the foundations of questionnaires or questionnaire construction to the frontiers of advanced statistical modeling, and introduce us to an integrated research environment designed to support the full analytical workflow. So we are privileged to have Dr. Abdelwahid Bouzar, our speaker this evening. He is a NAFL teacher, lecturer at the multidisciplinary faculty of Taza, and an active researcher specializing in applied linguistics and quantitative research methods. He holds a PhD in English language and literature from Sidi Mohammed bin Abdullah University and has published over 14 peer-reviewed articles with a strong focus on methodologies, scale development, and AI in education. Dr. Bouzar serves as an editorial board member of the Canadian Journal of Educational and Social Studies and as a peer reviewer for several Scopus indexed journals. He has delivered graduate level courses in research methodology and ICT at Sidi Mohammed bin Abdullah University and presented numerous international conferences on quantitative and mixed methods research. He is also the developer of an integrated statistical analysis environment designed to support research across the full analytical workflow, from data collection to advanced modeling within a single platform. The growth of knowledge depends entirely upon disagreement. Tonight, we invite respectful disagreement, critical engagement, and above all, learning. So please join me in extending a warm virtual welcome to Dr. Abdelwahid Bouzar. Dr. Abdelwahid, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ahmed. Thank you so much, Mr. Ahmed, as well, for this opportunity to share with you like a piece of knowledge that we seek to benefit from. So today I'm not just presenting something, but also seek to or aspire to receive constructive feedback. So in today's presentation, workshop, or lecture, or however you want it to be named, it's going to focus on the quantitative method, knowing that it is really a challenging task for many researchers, especially PhD and MA students. So it came to my mind that it is really a necessary step towards like reaching a stage in which publications or even doing a PhD or master thesis is not going to be that hard for the majority. So to start my presentation today, it is with a saying that says that great data or data is not collected, it is engineered. So as the majority of people think that data, it's not just something which is collected, but before the collection, we need many steps to reach this stage. And it's like a building, so it is not just something that is built by night, but it needs like many systematic and systematic steps to reach this stage. So before deciding on a topic or the purpose of study or whatsoever, we need to ask ourselves, what are the main research questions behind doing this or that research? So to reach this stage of asking the right questions, we need first to define what are the purposes of our research, be it a dissertation, thesis, or an article. So we need to define first what are the purpose or what are the purposes or what is the main purpose behind my study. And to do so, basically, studies are divided into some categories, starting with comparing groups. So there are some studies that compare 2, 3, or more groups, and there are some descriptive studies that seek to describe a phenomenon and to seek to know the level of a certain phenomenon in a certain area or a domain. And the third type of study, it seeks to examine the relationship between variables. And in this presentation or in this lecture, we are going to discover what are the types of variables and what are their purposes. And the fourth one has to do with predicting an outcome. And here we are mentioning the factors or the predictors and the outcomes or the results. So in this presentation, we are going to focus on one topic on which we are going to base all our methodology or our questions, purposes, etc., which is the tests or the relationship between tests, anxiety, and academic achievements. So for this study specifically, which is tests, anxiety, and academic achievements, it can be studied in different ways. So the first way here, it can be a descriptive study, so in which we rely on descriptives or frequencies. And the main question or the research question that can be asked here is, what is the level of anxiety and exam achievements among students? It can be represented in different ways, including pie charts, bar charts, and even anxiety can be divided into different categories. So the cognitive, emotional, and psychological anxiety. The second type that this study can be studied with is to do a comparative study in which we compare two or more groups. And the main research question in this case is going to be, are there significant differences between male and female students or significant differences across school levels? In this sense, we can, so for example, if we want to compare only two groups, in this case, so it is male and female, we are going to use what we call the t-test, and we are going to discover it later on or in a later stage. For studying or comparing three or more groups, in this case, we are going to use what we call ANOVA, or analysis of variance. So the third type of study is studying the relationship between variables. In this case, we are going to focus on only two variables, and in this case, just to understand what is a variable, in general, we have two main types of variables. The first one is called the independent variable. It is usually the predictor or the factor. It is the cause. And the dependence variable, it is the outcome. So here, for example, when I say, does test anxiety influence exam achievements? So according to what has been mentioned here, so what is, this is a question for the audience. So what is the independence and the dependence variable in this question here? So waiting for just 1 minute to answer these ones. So in the first question here, or as we have mentioned before, so the predictor is called independence variable and the outcome is called the dependence variable. So according to this, what is the dependence and independence variable according to the first question? So does test anxiety influence exam achievements? And the same thing for the second question, which states, does previous exam achievements predict later test anxiety? So Yazid has already mentioned that the dependence variable is exam achievements and anxiety is the independent variable, which is correct in this case. But for the second question here, does previous exam achievements predict later test anxiety? So in general, for the second question, it shows that test anxiety is the dependence variable, whereas the exam achievement is the independence variable. So as you can notice from these two questions here, we can deduce that the variables in general, or constructs in general, they are not dependent or independent in nature, but they can be both dependent and independent, dependent on our research question. So we are the ones who define which is which. The same thing for this one here. So do study habits predict students' academic achievements? So what do you think is the dependent and independent variable? The same thing for the second, third, and fourth questions. So for the second question, it says, is there a significant effect of teacher feedback on students' motivation. And the third one, does self-efficacy influence foreign language speaking performance? So here, as you can see, so generally speaking, we usually mention the independence variable in the first part of the question, whereas the dependence variable is mentioned in the second one. For the first question, do study habits predict students' academic achievements? So in this case, academic achievements is the dependence variable. And the same thing for students' motivation, speaking performance. So all these are dependent variables, whereas significance or teacher feedback, self-efficacy, all these ones are independent variables. Yeah, so for number 4, do coping strategies reduce stress levels among university students? So in this case, coping strategies are considered as the independence variable, and the academic or the stress is the dependence variable. So for this type, or when studying the relationship between two variables, there are usually two types of studies or two types of tests that can be done in this case. The first test that can be done here is correlational study. And in this case, there are three, when we say, or before mentioning this, so when we say correlation, it means that we are studying the relationship between two variables. So either it could be positive correlation. So in this case, both the dependent and independent variables are going in the same direction. So for example, we say the more students are stressed, the more they lack, or their self-efficacy is reduced. And the same thing the other way. So we can say the less students are stressed, the less, for example, or the less likely they are to achieve well. But for the negative correlation, it means that the dependent variable and the independent variable are going in opposite directions. So for example, the more students are stressed, the less the less they can achieve better, and vice versa. So the less they are stressed, the more they can achieve better. But the third here, what can we say? So the third possibility here is that there is no correlation between variables. So, and mostly the results are not significant. So when we say, or the possible research question in this case, so it can be said, is there a significant relationship between test anxiety and exam achievements among university students? And the second one, is there a significant relationship between cognitive tests, anxiety, and exam achievements among secondary school students? So in this case, we just mentioned that there is or there is no significant relationship. But for the hypotheses that we are going to see later on, so we should mention what is the type or of correlation, whether it is positive, negative, or the null hypothesis, which says that there is no correlation. For the second type of or the study or the test that we can do is regression. So regression is just another way, is a statistical term to refer to prediction. So for example, here in this question, it says, to what extent does test anxiety predict exam achievements among university students? And the second one, to what extent do the dimensions of test anxiety predict exam achievements among secondary school students? So here in the research question, we usually use the word predicts. in order to refer to the regression tests. Okay, so this is for the relationship between two variables. But when it comes to 3 or more variables, here we are speaking about complex models. So the first type of study that we do when we are talking about complex models is the mediation. And the mediation studies usually seek to answer the how and why questions. The first question that we can say in this study, or that we can put, is: does tests anxiety lower achievements directly, or does it first affect something else then affects achievements? So it is not that simple directional effect between the independent variable and the dependent variable. So in our case, it is test anxiety and its impact on exam achievements. But sometimes test anxiety can impact self-efficacy, and then self-efficacy can influence exam achievements. And the same thing for study habits and academic motivation. And the research question can be put in this way. So does self-efficacy mediate the relationship between test anxiety and exam achievements? Or it can be put as: do study habits mediate the relationship between test anxiety and exam achievements? The second type of test that can be done here is the moderation, or the moderation tests, which seeks to answer the when and who questions. So here it says that what is the condition that either strengthens or weakens the relationship between the independent and dependent variable. So in this case, for example, coping strategies can moderate the relationship between test anxiety and exam achievements. So it can either reduce or strengthen the relationship between these two variables. And the research question can be put as: do coping strategies moderate the relationship between test anxiety and exam achievements? But in other studies, more complex ones, they can use both of mediation and moderation tests. So in this case, for example, anxiety impacts study habits, which in turns might influence academic achievements. And even the relationship between anxiety and academic achievements can be moderated by coping strategies. So this is concerning the types of tests that can be done concerning 2 or more variables. So in this case, for example, here if we seek to identify the design, so and categorize these questions here. So for example, here, whenever we mention the level in the question, we refer to descriptive or to the descriptive study. So what is the level of exam achievements among secondary school students? So it is descriptive. The second one: to what extent does test anxiety predict? So whenever we mention the word predict in the question, we refer to regression. And here, in the third one: does academic motivation mediate the relationship between test anxiety and exam achievements? So in this case, we use mediation. And for the fourth one: does gender moderate? We mention the word moderate since we seek to investigate whether gender strengthen or weaken the relationship between different variables. So it is, of course, a moderation study. And here are there significant differences in test anxiety between male and female students. And here, whenever we mention only 2 groups, we use the t-test. And in case we want to add more groups, so in this case, we can use ANOVA, or the analysis of variance. Okay, so this is for these tests here. Moving to the second or the third thing is how to decide the topic. So before even moving to defining the research questions, the purpose of the study, and the variables and all these things, we should first define the topic of the dissertation, the thesis, or the research article. So usually there are two main ways to do so. The first one is considered the standard approach, which is the recommended one, starting with reviewing the literature, especially checking the limitations and future recommendation sections in articles. So this is the easiest way. Just go directly to the abstracts, then the limitations and future recommendations to spot the gap directly. And then move into defining the variables and research questions. But the second approach is called intuitive approach. So it should be processed with caution. Since here we can think of an idea, and then we can review the literature, identify the gap, defining the variables, but then double check again the literature review so that it is a loop and until we find the right gap in this case. So the standard approach means exists in research for proven gaps. The intuitive approach relies on inspiration but requires a rigorous double check against the literature to ensure validity. So let's suppose that the researcher already identified or has identified the variables and sets the research questions. So here we can move to designing the questionnaire. And to do so, this is the first thing that should come in mind or come to mind is, are there validated scales? We are going to see what do we mean by scales. So are there validated scales that have already been used in different studies and proven to measure the intended construct well? So scales in general are considered like small questionnaires or parts of questionnaires that measure specific constructs. So if there are already validated scales, it's an easy task. So just copy and paste it. So in this case, we adopt it. Otherwise, we can adapt it to fit the context. Otherwise, we cannot rely on random intuition, or we cannot just go to ChatGPT or any AI tool and ask them for the questionnaire or the scale to be like that. But we should first review the literature in order to rely on previous studies and rely on the theoretical framework that could be the basis of our new scale that we can develop. So generally speaking, the questionnaire is divided into two sections. The first one is usually called the demographics section. It includes questions related to gender, educational level, age, etc. But the second one is called the constructs measurement section, which includes the items of each construct with the suitable Likert scale. So when I say the Likert scale, it's usually, for example, ranging from strongly disagree to strongly agree, or for the frequency from never to always, or the importance not that important to strong importance or whatsoever. So there are many studies that can be, or many measurements that can be used in this case. So in our study here, so let's suppose that we are studying the the impact of anxiety on educational achievements with the moderation or the mediation of self-efficacy. Yes, indeed. So Yazid, you're correct. So it's ordinal in nature. For these constructs, for example, we have the first construct, which is anxiety. So anxiety can include different subconstructs, or it can include many indicators. The first one can be, for example, the cognitive interference, the emotionality, the tension, the worry, etc. And if we Google that, so this is the first task that a person should do, is that we should Google the already validated scales in this that's already pre-exists. For example, the cognitive test anxiety scale, it already exists. It includes 10 indicators: the state, trait, anxiety inventory, and the West Side test anxiety scale. We can either adopt them as they are, or we can adapt them according to our context. And the same thing for self-efficacy. So there is what we call the general self-efficacy scale, and it's already validated on 704 subjects or respondents, and we can safely integrate it into our study. And the same thing for other scales. The third one is the educational achievements. So educational achievements here, it cannot be measured using like validated scale, since it could be measured either through standardized tests or self-reported marks in one or many subjects. So this is concerning the measurements of constructs. But at the end here, we are going to move to the common mistakes. So the common mistakes and recommendations. For the common mistakes that researchers usually do is that they include in their questionnaires forced yes or no questions. So for example, are you anxious? This question cannot be answered by yes or no, but it can be answered through the Likert scale. For example, either strongly disagree to strongly agree. And the only purpose that yes or no questions should serve, they should be served as filtering or branching questions. So either to decide whether the respondent is going to complete or is going to stop the questionnaire. So, for example, use them strictly as gatekeepers to filter participants into appropriate logic paths and avoid forcing yes or no answers when measuring the intensity of a construct. There are some examples that I have already spotted in some groups. So, for example, here in this question, which is already being integrated in a questionnaire, it says I can effectively communicate my research findings to both academic and non-academic audiences through digital channels. And this question here, or the second one, I'm skilled in online collaboration, including virtual presentations and webinars. So in these questions here could not be answered through yes or no, answering or through yes or no answers. They should be answered through a Likert scale. Instead, we can choose in the right measurement tool. So, for example, either through agreements or intensity used for emotional or psychological stress, frequency ranging from never to always, the quality, for example, very bad to very good, and in attitudinal studies or belief-based studies measuring subjective perspectives. And to activate this filtering or branching option here, there is an example that we can resort to here. So I'm going to do a practical one here. So all right. So for example, this question here that I have in this case, I have this demographic question, which has to do with academic level. So in this case, in my study, I don't want master and PhD students to answer my questionnaire. I want only bachelor students. So by the way, this is Office Forms. In this case, I can just go to this 3 buttons here, more settings for question, and I will choose add branching. So whenever we choose add branching, for example, I want the questionnaire to continue only for bachelor students, I can click here and click on next or any other section that I can choose. But for the master and PhD students, I want the form to end there. So here I could select just end of the form. And in this case, whenever, for example, okay, whenever I have this option here, so if I select, for example, bachelor, it will still show next. But if I select master or PhD students, it will show submit, which means that the questionnaire will end here. Okay, so this is concerning the branching technique that we can use. And these are some examples that I have already spotted for other questionnaires that have been distributed by other students. So for example here, how frequently do you use YouTube for English language learning purposes? So in this case here, even if or even though I click on never, I still see suivant, for example here, next. And the same thing for this question here. Have you received any formal training on how to write prompts for AI tools? And in this case, even though I selected no training at all, I still see the next button here, which means that the upcoming questions are going to be irrelevant for me. Okay, so the next or the other mistakes that researchers usually do is when they include double-barreled items. So double-barreled items, there are questions that include different measurements items. So for example, here my teacher is supportive and knowledgeable, whereas it should be my teacher is supportive and my teacher is knowledgeable in 2 different questions. In order to, or since combining the 2 distinct concepts in one question forces ambiguous answers, since I might see my teacher as supportive, but I might not see him or her as knowledgeable. So it's preferable to split it into separate items and measure only one idea at a time. The second mistake that is usually done is the unequal intervals. So, for example, in this example that you can see here, which is also spotted in another questionnaire, which shows that, for example, the range or the interval between 18 and 22 is is just 4, but here it shows that it's basically it was 23, but here it's which means that there is 5 points of interval here. But whereas for the second and the third one, there are 7 and more points between each age intervals. So, which means there are inconsistent range sizes distort the data analysis. But how can we fix it is that we can just fix or to ensure identical mathematical distance between all categorical ranges. For example, here, you can see that we have fixed this through fixing the 4 points between each age sizes. And the third, or the last one, is including open-ended placements or open-ended questions in the very beginning of the questionnaire. For example, here you can see that in this questionnaire we have an open-ended question which says your field of study, and sometimes what do you think about this, or define this or define that, which is absolutely wrong in quantitative studies, since it's really causes the survey fatigue and drop off from an early stage. So it's better to move cognitive heavy open questions to the end and start with easy structured scales. Okay, so the other question that we have included here, or the other mistake that is usually, it's not a mistake, but it's something that causes the survey fatigue, is including or crowding questions together. So in this case, or in this example that you can see here, and I think most of you have already experienced this one, is when you see a set of questions congested and crowded in this way, so you usually just either need to scroll up and down to see what is the scale that has been used here, or you just click on those buttons randomly. But in this case, it could be fixed via different tools that you can search for. So 1 minute, so that I can show you a better alternative. All right, so in this example that you can see here, you can see that we have used a platform that allows participants to select or to read a question at a time. So there is no need to, or there is no, there are no questions that are crowded together on top of each other, but there is only one question at a time, and I can answer it, and I can take my time to answer it separately. So it doesn't create that impression that we have a lot of questions, but the respondent is going to answer one by one. So for example here, if I have the first question, I can choose the best answer for me, and it will directly move to the second one. And the same thing for question 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so this is something that can be done to improve even the experience of responding to questionnaires. And at the end, you could just and you could guarantee that you have clear, well-constructed questionnaire through being clear and specific. So through eliminating all ambiguous terminology, and you should include only one idea through verifying the removal of all double-barreled survey items, add reversal items. So like flip the wording on select questions to prevent respondents straight lining. So for example here, in this questionnaire that we have here, we can, instead of saying I can always manage to solve difficult problems if I tried hard enough, we can manipulate it or reverse it through saying, for example, I cannot manage to solve difficult problems if I try hard. So it will serve as a check-in question, and it will ensure that the respondents do not just answer randomly, but that they answer mindfully. So, and this will ensure that you don't need too much respondents to reach significance in your study. For the next steps that we are going to, or before moving to this one, we can also include attention check-in items, like embed 2 or 3 explicit instructional items per scale. For example, select strongly agree to show you are reading, or select strongly disagree if you are a male, if the male is the respondent in this case. So it's better to include such questions or such intention check-in items in order to make sure that the respondents are answering mindfully and just ensuring that you are not going to get haphazard answers. For the last one, or the last steps that we are going to do, is deciding the sample size. So what is the suitable sample size for me, and what is the suitable coding for the questionnaire? So this is the next step after you decide or you have set all the questions, all the scales, and integrate them into your questionnaire. So to decide the best code, and including the codebook basics, the variable naming, the reverse coding where relevant, and preparing data either in Excel, SPSS, or Analiva. So Analiva, in this case, it is a software that I've already developed and solves many queries and many problems that many researchers are suffering from. And the last step, it's not the last step, of course, but moving to analysis using Smart PLS, Analiva, or SPSS, and then the interpretations of results. So generally speaking, for sample size decision, so according to Hare et al. 2023, they stipulate that it's recommended to include the minimum or the maximum number of items in a scale used in the questionnaire multiplied by 10. So let's suppose, for example, that we have three scales in our study. So we have 3 scales. So in our case, we have the anxiety scale, we have the self-efficacy, and then we have, for example, motivation. So let's suppose that anxiety has 10 items, but self-efficacy has 8 items, and motivation has 6 items. So here I'm going to go directly to the scale that has the maximum number, the most numbers of items, and then I'm going to multiply it by 10. So in this case, I'm going to have 100 respondents or subjects in this case that are needed in my study. However, this is just a rule of thumb that is recommended by Hare et al. 2023. But there is something else that we can use in this case. It is called power analysis. So the power analysis, it comes after fixing the final questions and moving to and doing a pilot study of 20 respondents, for example, or so in this range, and then go into many softwares, including SPSS, there is Power B or whatsoever. So there are or G Power, sorry, etc. that has this possibility here. So for example, I'm going to do a direct simulation of this one. Okay, so let's suppose that we have in our case we have two hindered respondents, and in this case I'm going just to decide on the right one through selecting power analysis. And the same thing is or exists in SPSS or in other softwares. I can just click on that, and I should decide on the type of test that I will decide the power analysis on. So if I want to make a comparative study, in this case comparing the means of two groups, I should select t-test. But if I should select, for example, more than two groups, three or more, in this case, I should select ANOVA. And the same thing for correlation, regression, and chi-square or k-square. So here I should say, for example, what is the suitable sample size that I need. And here we can select the desired power. So it's preferable to keep it as 0.8, and the same thing for the other ones. So in my case, I need 32 individuals per group. And in total, I need 64 individuals or subjects or respondents to reach significance in my study. So this is basically concerning the first step of deciding the suitable number of respondents in my study. The first one is just relying on the rule of thumb, and the second one is doing the power analysis. So maybe we are going to organize other workshops that we are going to provide more details concerning this one. Right, so coming to the next step that the researchers should do is just coding the questions. So let's suppose that I have gender section and I have male and female. So in this case, I could just give male a number. In this case, it is 1, and female, it is number 2. And the same thing for academic background. If it is a BA, a master, or a PhD. In this case, I could just do number 1 here, number 2 here, and number 3 here. So, and the same thing is going to be done for all the questions except the reversed ones, or the reverse items. So let's suppose that in our case that we have already seen. So here, for example, we have, I can always manage to solve difficult problems if I try hard enough. So this one seeks to measure the general self-efficacy. And the same thing, if someone opposes me, I can find the means and ways to get what I want. What we mean by the reversed items are the way the items are worded. So if all the items here go hand in hand with increasing the self-efficacy or having or giving an impression that the respondent has a good self-efficacy, we can include some questions that show the opposite. So for example here, instead of including I can solve most problems if I invest the necessary effort, so I can reverse it and include I cannot solve most problems if I invest the necessary efforts. So if the Likert scale in this case ranges from strongly disagree to strongly agree, and so for example here, if strongly disagree is numbered by 1 and strongly agree is numbered by 5, in that question specifically, so for example, question number 6, I should reverse the coding in this case. So in this case, strongly disagree is going to have number 5, and strongly agree have just number one, so, or is going to be scored as one. So this is what we mean by reverse scoring. So for example, here in Analiva, so it has already solved this problem through recoding into same variable. So let's suppose I have this one here, or 1 minute, please. Okay, where is Brave? Okay, so for example here, I have this one here. I have, for example, the construct number 2. So if I have the construct number 2, or its Likert scales numbered from 1 to 5, for example, I could just click on reverse code, and it's going to reverse all the codes for the other ones. So here, for example, female is coded as number 1 and male is coded as number 2. I could just click reverse code and it's going to reverse code them. So the same thing is going to be applied to the other scales or the other items. So that's it. So this is what we are going to cover this session, and we are going to cover the rest, inshallah, in other upcoming workshops. So thank you so much again for your attention, and thank you, Mr. Ahmed, as well. And if you have any question, I will be glad to assist with that.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Abdelwahid, for this insightful and rational presentation. I think we have several questions in the chat box. Mr. Marto. Mr. Marto, Ahmed, do you hear us? You need to activate your mic. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry for the internet connection.
It seems that you have some connection problems. You can stop your cam, then you can ask your questions. Mr. Ahmed? It seems that Mr. Martur is facing some technical issues. So, Said Louhed, we have different questions that were shared with us by several attendees. The first question is how can we ensure that our research questions remain both shared and adaptable throughout the research process? It was shared by Lamia, I think.
I think she means how can we ensure that our research questions remain both clear and adaptable?
Clear, yeah, not shared.
Yeah,
clear
and adaptable throughout the research process. I'm not sure what she means by this one, since ensuring research questions clarity and adaptability is or relies on the variables that have been chosen before. So if you are sure enough of the variables being studied, or the variables and your dependent variables, confounding variables, mediating variables, so all these types of variables, if you are sure enough of what you are doing and what is the cause and what is the effect, what is the predictor and what is the predicted. So in this case, you are not going to have any problem with formulating your research question. What is really necessary is to know these nuances. And after the stage of deciding your variables, you are going to easily find the suitable research question and also how to formulate your hypothesis. So in this case, you are not going to have any problem if you master or if you know well what are your variables.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Martois. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Abdelwahid, for your answer. Mr. Martois, do you have the second question, please?
Sorry for the. I have problem hearing the.
No problems, no problem. Right, go ahead. Actually, we can't hear you. Yeah.
The connection. Question is about how can. Did you hear me?
We don't hear you. Your voice is not clear. You can stop the cam and use just the mic, because I think you have a low flow of internet. Okay, so Mr. Bouzar, I have another question, which is your lecture highlights common mistakes in questionnaire construction that compromise data quality before analysis begins. In your experience, what is the single most frequent and damaging error that doctoral researchers or MA researchers make when designing Likert scales, and what practical steps can they take immediately to correct it?
Okay, so this is your question. We're about implementing Likert scales and what are the common mistakes that researchers do when implementing them.
The most frequent one. The most frequent error.
Basically, the most frequent error is not being consistent when selecting the Likert scale. So, for example, in a question, I have already seen, so it has become a habit of me doing just getting access to PhD groups and having a look at the questionnaires that PhD students are distributing there. So what I have noticed is that they mix the Likert scales and they are not consistent when putting the order. So for example, in the same construct, you are going to find some items that are measured using a Likert scale ranging from strongly disagree to strongly agree. But moving to the second indicator, you are going to see that they use a Likert scale that uses or that ranges from strongly agree to strongly disagree. So they shift it, and when coding this one is going to be coded from 1 to 5, and the other one is going to be coded from 5 to 1, which is going to cause a lot of misinterpretations and a lot of mistakes when showing the results. So in this case, it is not a good habit of doing this. So researchers should be consistent when setting these Likert scales. And also the second mistake that they do is that they choose different measurements for the same construct. So a construct should always be measured using the same Likert scale, especially when we are talking about its indicators. For example, an indicator is measured through using a Likert scale ranging from strongly disagree to strongly agree, and another indicator is measured through not important or not all important to very important. So here researchers should be consistent when setting their questions or their Likert scales. Sorry. And also one thing that this is not a mistake, but it's a preference. So researchers should preferably use Likert scales with many numbers. So for example, it's preferable to start with 5, 7 is better, and 10 is much more is better than both of them, since it gives more nuances to the answers of subjects or the respondents.
Yeah, thank you for your insightful answer. Mr. Murtala, could you? Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Professor Ahmed. First of all, I would like to seize the opportunity to thank you for organizing this webinar. It's insightful, informative, from which, as a researcher or beginner MA student and PhD student, we are in much needed presentations and collaboration and guidance in our journey.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you, for the professor. For example, how many participants in a given questions are accepted for the analysis and for the findings and the data to be generalized? So when we are talking about quantitative research, basically we are talking about generalizability of the data to the population. So, for example, how many participants? Is there like an exact number of participants that should be included in the questions, in the research in the paper?
Okay.
All right. So the question of how many respondents should be and its relationship to the generalizability of the findings, they are quite irrelevant, since the number of respondents determines the significance of the results, only the significance. But the generalizability is, from my experience, it's something which is subjective more than being objective, since you can use 1,000 respondents in the Moroccan context, but when submitting your paper to an international journal, they will say that your findings are not generalizable to other populations, and you should include other populations to make it generalizable. And if you do so, you can find that your findings are generalizable, even if you include just 100 or 120 respondents. So here, the number of respondents determines just the significance of your findings. It determines just the p-value. Those who are familiar with this one. So it's just lets you say whether my finding is significantly, for example, correlated or not correlated. I mean the variables in this case.
Thank you so much. Another question from the chat box is how should missing or incomplete responses be handled during the analysis? The missing data, should be?
Yeah. So this is something that should be done in the stage of making your questionnaire. So for example, if you are making your questionnaire online, you should make it mandatory. So in this case, you are not going to find any missing data. But if you have a paper-based questionnaire, in this case, so you have many options that can be handled in different ways. So, Mr. Ben Isa, can I share the screen so that I can show how can we handle this in the software?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you for the insightful. Another one is like, why should we?
Mr. Murtala, moment. He's going to explain through the presentation.
Yeah. So in this case, so for example, in this study, I have some missing data. So in this case, we have many options of handling missing data, especially according to the respondents who didn't complete some answers. So the first type, or the first choice, or the option of handling missing data is mean replacement. So mean replacement here, it means that the software calculates all those answers of the same constructs and calculating the average, only the average, and replace that missing data that we have there. And the same thing, it's almost the same operation that has been done for median replacement. And the next one, or this is the one that is hugely or strongly recommended for most cases, is the list-wise deletion. It means that that respondent is going to be deleted from the responses or from the data. So the same thing for regression. Regression, it means it does some certain calculations, mathematical calculations, to predict what is that score that can be put in that empty cell or empty response. Or you can just choose skip in order to proceed with the current data with that missing data or missing case included as well. So this is the same thing that has been done both in SPSS, in JASP, and in other softwares, especially in R as well, SmartSPSS or whatsoever, JAMOV as well. So all of them deal with missing data the same way.
Another question from Janet. She said, when should we reverse the items in the questionnaire? Why should we reverse?
Yeah. So we should reverse the items in order to make them as check-in items, or as we call them, attention check-in items. For example, if I'm assessing self-efficacy and I include just the items that have positive meaning concerning self-efficacy, so here the person can just go and click on strongly agree for all the items. But if I include, for example, a negative wording of the same statements, so here the respondent should click strongly disagree. So it ensures that the respondents are paying attention when answering the items, and I can delete those who don't meet the conditions.
Another question is like, is it too ambitious to develop our own skills or our own questionnaires without depending on validated ones?
Could you please restate what you have mentioned, Si Ahmed?
Is it too ambitious to develop our own skills for a second-year PhD student?
Yes, why not? But here, unless you couldn't find an already validated one, since here when you include already validated ones, it ensures that you don't have to deal with construct validity, reliability, etc., since it has already been done for you, and you are not going to risk falling into the trap of lacking validity, reliability, etc. But it is recommended also to adapt them. But the last stage is to develop yours, and maybe doing studies that ensure that you are going to validate your own as well. So it's a normal practice in quantitative studies, but this is usually what has been done for years. So there is always that preference of adapting or adopting pre-validated ones.
So for you, professor, is when in a paper or in a study you opt for a questionnaire in the data collection. In this questionnaire, you include closed questions and open-ended questions. Can we consider this design as a mixed method approach or just a quantitative research?
So here you mean including open-ended questions in the questionnaire that are being distributed. So this is your question, and whether we can consider it as quantitative or qualitative.
It's a mixed. Is it like a mixed method approach in which we have a quantitative and qualitative?
All right, so here it depends on the data saturation. So when we are speaking about qualitative study, we are talking about when we reach saturation. If those answers are compatible or go hand in hand with questions that are in the questionnaire and answer the why about those questions in the questionnaire, so here we can consider them as mixed method, unless they reach, as we say, the data saturation. So they should be coded, they should provide in-depth answers, but there are some scholars who do not consider them as so, since they consider the qualitative data as the ones that are collected through either structured, non-structured, or unstructured or semi-structured interviews, since the interviewee here answers spontaneously, doesn't have much more time to think deeper, and you ensure that the data that you are going to collect are not biased. So this is the risk of collecting qualitative data through questionnaires.
That's very appreciated. Thank you. Another question from Abdul Ghani is, he said, do we use the wording dependent and independent variables when doing a correlation study? I mean, doesn't it imply causality, not relationship?
No, not at all. So here, when using dependence and independence variables, they do not give any idea or do not infer causality or correlation or prediction. So they are just terms that we use to refer to the predictor and the outcome. But when we say there is a correlation between the independent and dependent variables, so it implies correlation. But when we say, for example, this independent variable impacts the dependent variable, in this case, we refer to causality, which is really hard to establish. And even though there are many scholars who stated that the structural equation modeling method implies causality, since it uses mathematical operations that rely on the multiplication of correlation and regression scores to give an inference about or an idea about causality, but it doesn't.
Another question from Khadija. She said, do you think JSP can be used as an alternative to species?
Yes, indeed. Yes, but JASP can be used as an alternative, and it's really good. It is my favorite one, since it has really good interface, and it's really easy. It shows the results synchronously, so it synchronizes the answers automatically on the right side of the window, but it requires the SPSS coded file. So this is the only drawback that it has. Sorry.
That's nice. From another question, how does questionnaire errors affect advanced analysis? When we make errors in the questionnaires, in the design, how does this affect advanced analysis, and what are the better alternatives to all these errors?
How do questionnaire errors affect advanced analysis, and what are the better alternatives? I didn't get what she means by this one. How do questionnaires? So does she mean that the mistakes in formulating the questions, the indicators, integrating the scales in the questionnaire, and its impact on the results that we get? So if this is, or if this what she really means, then it's yes. So it affects many areas, including, so for example, here there are some results that we can get from softwares, and they can give us an idea that the questions that we have used are not suitable, either when we measure the construct validity, when we measure the reliability, or when we measure multicollinearity. So here, when we say multicollinearity, there are some questions that researchers include, and they measure the same thing. So here we fall into redundancy, and thus it impacts the results that we get at the end. So for example, when we say multicollinearity, there is a question in a scale that measures self-efficacy, for example, or anxiety. So the first indicator says, I'm really anxious when doing my exams. The second question says, I'm really nervous when doing my exams. So here they just use different words for the same constructs. So in this case, we are not going to have really valid and reliable answers at the end.
Professor.
Thank you, Mr. Martra, for all these questions. I think there are more other questions because this lecture is informative and it's amazing. I think that several followers enjoyed the lecture. I have a question that let's consider it the last question, Dr. Bouzar. With over 14 years peer review with articles and you have a significant publishing experience, what advice would you offer to doctoral researchers and the MA researchers who have collected their data but are struggling to move from analysis to a publishable manuscript? And what methodological mistakes most commonly lead to journal rejection?
Okay, so here, thank you so much for this answer, since these are among the main purposes of doing this, or these workshops or lectures, is that many students didn't receive that strong methodological course that allowed them to prevent those mistakes. So among the mistakes that should be avoided is just try to prevent anything that doesn't make sense. So among the things that do not make sense, so if you allow me, so this is something that I really forgot to mention in the lecture, is could I please share the screen?
Sure. Yeah.
I will show you something that I have noticed many researchers do when doing their research, and it really leads to the rejection of their papers, is when integrating the results of such Likert scales answers. So they just list a question on the top and they present it like this. So for example, some numbers referring to strongly, disagree, neutral, etc. And they start analyzing them. These figures here are not analyzable. They should not be analyzable at first in nature, since they don't give any idea about what should be said. So we just mention the numbers, we just state random numbers, and we give them interpretations however we want, not how they should be analyzed. So here in this example that I show here, you can see that if we combine the numbers of respondents who answered with strongly, disagree, we are going to get 33. and the same for neutral, and the same for the combination of agree and strongly agree, which means that we have 3 equal numbers, but in the analysis we cannot have any idea how can we interpret them. So this is among the first and the common mistakes that have been repeated multiple times, and I have seen many researchers repeat them. The second advice that I can give here is try to use really at least the first generation statistical methods, especially the quantitative, and especially those topics that are related to education or applied in linguistics, since it deals with the psychological traits of learners, of respondents, and it's really it always has something new to deal with and to study or to investigate. And this is something that most reviewers do not reject, by the way. So I, as a reviewer, I always appreciate those strong methods that do not or that analyze anything with numbers and give the proof of the significance of those numbers. So it is not just about saying anything about anything and make it as a paper, but when dealing with numbers, so it's kind of mathematics. It's 1 + 1, it equals 2. So it's rejected most of the time. So this is among the recommendations that I should give. So try to rely on rigorous methods, use strong tools, and give solid interpretations to your results. And we are still learning as well. So that's it. And something that I would like to mention, or that I forgot to mention. So when Mr. Ahmed has mentioned something about the mixed method. So mixed method, it can be understood in 2 different ways, and this field really still lacks many studies. So when respondents say that I have used mixed method, they can use either the interviews and consolidate the data, or what can we say, strengthen the data through the interviews, or we can turn the interviews or the qualitative data into numbers as well. We can code them and we can draw numbers from them to give new insight to different areas. And there is something that I have already written before, which is an article that deals with the computational literary analysis of Hamlet, Shakespeare's Hamlet. So it is something that is really new, and it could be a huge gap in the literature that can be dealt with. So that's it, Mr. Ahmed. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for your insightful, practical, and essential lecture. It is, as you said, a workshop. It can be a workshop because we have several interactive feedback from our followers, and we have more questions, but we can answer these questions later on, inshallah, in other lectures or in other workshops. You are always welcome to be with us in Beit Lisaniyat Academy. So Mr. Martou, do you have any final words before we close this would end it? Mr. Martou. Yeah, any final words? Okay, you're welcome. You're welcome. So, Dr. Bouzar, any final words before we end this lecture?
Just would like to thank you, Mr. Ahmed, Mr. Martou as well. I'm really glad that we have organized this one, and looking forward to organizing other ones, though they can be as an extension of this workshop-like lecture, in which I aspire to maybe we can get like more interactions and delve deep into the quantitative data analysis and maybe computational qualitative method as well. So thank you so much. I'm really glad to be among Lisaniat's members as usual. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Welcome, Mr. Buzar. Thank you, Mr. Martour, for your participation. And thanks to our supervisors, namely the president of the Academy, Dr. Marwan Skran, and all the members of this big house, Beit Lisaniat. And you are always welcome to participate with us through sending us your proposals for a lecture or for a mini conference or a conference. So thank you to all active participants and attendees. Your attendance certificate will be distributed very soon. And so thank you so much, Dr. Buzar. Thank you, Dr. Marto. See you, inshallah, in the upcoming events. Thank you.
Okay, goodbye. Thank you.
Yes, enjoy your evening. Goodbye.